Hi everybody, it's Olive. The BookTubeAthon has officially come to a close. I had a really great week of reading. I thought I would let you know what I ended up reading for the entire week. And then it's still pretty early in the month of August, so I thought I'd let you know the other books that I'm eyeing up, thinking about reading for the rest of the month. I covered some of these in the BookTubeAthon update I posted a few days ago, but I will just briefly talk about them again. First book I finished is A Sport and a Pastime by James Salter. I was interested in this book because Rebecca Shinsky over at Book Riot loves this book. It's her favorite James Salter novel. She rereads it every summer. She said it was very steamy, and so that caught my interest. While it was just as steamy as she said it was, and it had some very beautiful writing, I just was not very invested in it. You're following the life and death of a love affair that takes place in France in, I believe, the 1960s. The narrator is an older man, and he is friends with the younger man who is involved in the love affair. I'm assuming the way that the narrator was finding out about the love affair was because the man involved in the love affair, Philip Dean, was friends with him and was telling him about it. But I just also got a really big vibe that the narrator was taking liberties and just like assuming that these things were happening behind closed doors, which is a little bit weird that you're in the mind of an older man as he lives out these fantasies in his head of what potentially went down between this couple. It was kind of strange. Also, the guy who was actually involved in the love affair, Philip Dean, was a jackass. He wasn't straight up mean to the girl that he was involved with, but he treated her as though she were below him, and he didn't really place any value in the relationship besides the sexual aspect of it, whereas she obviously did. She put a lot of value in their relationship together. There were several elements of this book that kept me from really enjoying it. I ended up giving it 3 stars, probably more like 2.5 in my head. Reading this book completed the challenge of read the last book you acquired, since this was, at that time, the last book that I had acquired. The next challenge I completed was read a book without letting go of it, and I read a graphic novel, Gotham Academy. Again, I talked about this one in my update, but this takes place in the Batman universe, and this is a boarding school within the city of Gotham. In this boarding school, there are several different characters that you follow, the main character being Olive Silverlock and her ex-boyfriend, maybe current boyfriend's little sister, Mia, also known as Maps. There are many other really great characters in this story. There are some secrets, especially that Olive has. There's some mystery surrounding her mother. It's really funny. It's a lot of fun. I really like the art style. I am highly looking forward to continuing with this series. The next book I completed was The Flight of Gemma Hardy by Margot Livesey. Completing this book helped me complete the challenge of read a book with blue on the cover. This was a Jane Eyre retelling, and for the first half of the book, I really enjoyed it. The main character of this book is obviously Gemma Hardy, who is the modern Jane Eyre. It takes place in the 1960s. She has a lot of the elements of the early part of Jane Eyre, a lot harder than Jane Eyre had it. It seemed as though life with her aunt was much harder for Gemma than it was for Jane. When she went off to school, it was so much harsher, if you can believe it. I know Jane Eyre had it pretty rough. Gemma had it even harder. Like I said, I really enjoyed the first half of this book. When it came to the second half, when the romance started to bloom, if you've read the Jane Eyre story, you know what I mean. When that started to happen, things started to turn a little bit away from the Jane Eyre story. There were elements there on in that were very inconsistent with the story, and oftentimes it felt as though the author of this book was scrambling to try to stay along the same lines as Jane Eyre. Also, towards the end of the book, Gemma does something really ridiculous and hurtful, and it just made me hate her. In Jane Eyre, I never stopped liking Jane. I thought she was strong and very consistent and just a good person deep down. Gemma had me questioning whether or not she was a good person deep down several times. I ended up giving this one 3 stars. For me, it probably would have been more suited to a 2.5, but I was okay with rounding it up the extra half star because I did enjoy the first half. The audiobook that I completed was The Uncoupling by Meg Wolitzer. Speaking of modern retellings, this is kind of a modern retelling of the ancient Greek play Lysistrata. The story in the ancient Greek play is that women decide to go on a sex strike to withhold sex from men in order to stop a war. The women have gotten really fed up with the men's warlike tendencies. They want the war to end. They do not know how to get the men to listen to them unless they stop giving them something they want. In the book The Uncoupling, a drama teacher who has just arrived, has just started working at a small high school in New Jersey, decides to hold this play. At the same time, maybe coincidentally, maybe not, all the women, whether it be faculty, staff, or students at this high school, have a spell come over them where they are no longer interested in having sex with their men. This is obviously met with negative reactions from all the men in their lives. The whole thing was pretty much a modern fable. As always, I really liked Meg Wolitzer's writing and her characterization. It wasn't my favorite Meg Wolitzer book, but I appreciated it for what it was. I gave this one 3 stars. I did very much enjoy it. Listening to that book completed the challenge of read a book you really want to read, because I like Meg Wolitzer and really wanted to read it. The last book I read, I did not finish. I got halfway through before the readathon ended, and then I just finished it in the wee hours of this morning. I stayed up until 2 a.m. and finished the other half of the book, and that was Tana French, Faithful Place. This book was for the challenge, read an author whose last name starts with the same first letter as yours. I ended up giving this book 4 stars. Tana French continues to blow me away. I was hoping that I would enjoy this book even more than I enjoyed The Likeness. I didn't. The Likeness still remains my favorite out of the first 3 books that I have read so far. This book follows undercover agent Frank Mackey, or he's an undercover supervisor now. You meet Frank Mackey in the previous book, The Likeness, where he is supervising Cassie Maddox's undercover investigation that book covers. I was really happy to find out that this book was going to center around Frank Mackey. He is sarcastic and snarky. He is extremely smart, very charismatic. It was so much fun being able to be in his mind for 400 pages. The story goes like this. When Frank Mackey was 19 years old and living on the outskirts of Dublin, he was desperate to get away from his crazy family and his crazy neighborhood and start a new life for himself in England. He was planning on doing so with the love of his life, first love, first girlfriend, Rosie Daly. However, the night that Rosie and Frank are supposed to run away together, Rosie doesn't show up. Instead, there's a note left for him at the place that they were supposed to meet that he interprets as meaning she went on ahead without him. Frank decides to leave anyway that night and ends up carrying a torch for Rosie and some resentment from the whole situation, feeling as though he's been left by the woman he loves. He stays away for 22 years until he gets a fateful phone call from his sister informing him that a suitcase that looks a lot like the one Rosie Daly would have wanted to take with her when they ran off together has been found concealed near the place where they were supposed to meet to run off together. This begins a whole investigation as to what happened to Rosie that night. Did she go on ahead? Did she leave Frank? If she didn't, then what happened to her? Where is she? I don't want to tell you any more because it's spoiler territory, but all I can tell you is this. In true Tana French fashion, is just a fabulous book. If you want something that's going to be really page-turning, if you want funny, snarky, inside police stuff, this is definitely the thing for you. I really enjoyed True Detective, the first season. I have not watched the second season yet, and this whole series has a little bit of an undercurrent of the way that show made me feel. So if you ever find yourself hankering for a really good mystery series, I can't recommend this one enough. So total, I read 2.5 physical novels, a graphic novel, and listened to 1 audiobook. I'm very happy with that. Of course, I would have liked to finish all the books that I set out for myself, but I knew it was going to be quite the undertaking. However, I had a ton of fun participating. I now am in this ravenous, I just need to read everything mood. That's why I was up until 2 a.m. reading. So of course, I think this is going to give me a great head start into my reading month for August, the remainder of August. There are 2 nonfiction books that I had not finished from July, so I'm going to work on finishing those up. The first is Billie Holiday, The Musician and Myth by John Sved. This talks about the singer Billie Holiday. It's a very interesting book. He focuses more on her music than other biographies do, which I very much appreciate. The other nonfiction book that I am slowly working my way through is The Land of the Firebird by Suzanne Massie. I originally thought that this covered Russian folklore, but it's actually more just a cultural history with just some basic history thrown in. It's very interesting. Ronald Reagan actually read this one in the 80s, I found out recently. Pretty cool. I was going to try to read The Great Glass Sea by Josh Weil. I am still very interested in this one, but it just is not keeping my interest. And that's how I get myself into reading slumps. So I'm putting this one down and picking up some other things instead. I'm definitely going to be reading The Mark of the Lion by Susanna Ruda. This is a mystery book that takes place in Africa in 1919. I don't know what it is about the summertime, but I'm just in the mood to read mysteries. So I'm just going to indulge that and start reading this one. And then I'm not entirely sure what I'm going to do after I finish those books. I kind of want to leave the door open for myself to just kind of read what I'm feeling like, since that's what I left August open for myself to do, but I am very interested in picking up The Unfolding of Language by Guy Ducher. I hauled this one recently. Or since I was so into Faithful Place, I might just pick up the 4th book in the Dublin Murder Squad series by Tana French. This one's called Broken Harbor. I'm very much looking forward to keeping up with my reading momentum. The end of the BookTubeAthon put me in a really great place, and I think it's going to be a really great month for me. Let me know if you've read any of these books. Leave me a comment down below. Contact me on Twitter or Instagram @abookolive, and the link to my Goodreads is down below if you would like to be friends. Thanks so much for watching. Have a good day. Bye-bye.